more, or you know, whatever it is. I think it was a little easier. I mean, it helped to kind of figure him out a little bit.
Those answers to his questions to the fans, you know, where they were like, just like, that's what it means, you know, and it really, yeah. I mean, do you think that kind of resonates with people in an odd sort of way, because it's like so bizarre that, you know.
But you know what, any of the guys who've come from the boxing world, you meet guys like that sometimes. Nick Diaz isn't, he's made it very clear. He's not here to hang out and make any friends. He's not looking to, you know, have any barbecues over at his house with anybody from the MMA world. He's here to fight. That's it. And it's pretty, I'm cool with that. You know, just, you got to show up to press conferences and do the stuff. And now he's doing all the stuff that needs to be done. So I'm cool with it.
Were there any concerns or nerves at all coming in that wasn't going to happen, or
no.
Did the BJ Penn fight kind of?
It's been, you know, well, wait till you see the last episode of Primetime. I mean, it's, there's no doubt that as the week of the fight comes, he changes, and he becomes the Nick Diaz that we're used to seeing.
Do you think you're starting to get him?
Start what?
Do you think you're starting to get him at all, Nick?
Yeah, I get him. I always got him. I always understood how he was or whatever, but you can't not come to press conferences.
Speaking of not going to press conferences, why didn't you go last week?
Which one?
After the fight show.
Yeah, I wasn't in the mood.
So let's hear
I can not go if I don't want to.
So
I'm kidding. Dude, I've been to 10 years. I haven't missed one fight, and I'm usually at every. I usually try to skip press conferences where I know I'm gonna.
Well, don't you think?
Yeah, get hammered. Not get hammered, but
it's your first.
That
was your first official Fox show.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, your thoughts were important on how that show went and where guys were going.
Yeah, I know.
Can we hear,
I'm going to start giving some Nick Diaz answers. It meant what it meant.
Are you sunburned right now? You've been on a vacation.
No, it was sunny out the last 2 days, and I'm white as hell.
Hey, do you miss GSP at all in terms of ticket sales and what he does for bringing fans into the seats?
Yeah, well, you know, GSP is a monster, man. I say it all the time. He's the pay-per-view king of this sport, and yeah, it hurts without him. But this is what we do. We put, you know, guys like Condit and Diaz. Nobody knew GSP at one time either, you know. And you know, you have to build guys.
Yeah, not to belabor the UFC on Fox stuff, but I mean, were you just disappointed overall with things? I mean, we've seen ratings now that were down a little, but pretty good for the time slot.
I mean, awesome. They're pumped with the ratings. I'm happy with the ratings, yeah, no, it was good. It was good.
Well, you said last week, by the way, before the fight, that Diaz and Miller would not be the main event. Now you announced it's the main event. What changed?
Yeah, because Joe Silva and I got together, and as we started to build the card, we changed our mind on what we wanted to do. We did make that the main event, and have we announced the other two fights yet?
LeVar Johnson and Pat Barry was announced late last night.
It was?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
there's one more coming. There's one more coming. Huh?
Announce that one.
Go for it.
It's not done yet.
Can you talk
on the depth, or I guess like the change in the welterweight division? You've seen Fitch get knocked out and Shields get knocked out. Who do you see right now as, you know, in your words, in the mix?
Well, these two right here. This fight's got to happen, and then we got to crown the welterweight champion. And then, you know, in the time that this fight happens, and in the time that the actual championship fight happens between the two champions, there's going to be a lot of fallout. I'm sure a lot of things are going to happen between now and then.
Is Verdun and Nelson, is that for like a #1 contendership for?
You know, we'll see what happens. I haven't even thought of that at all. We'll see how that fight goes down and what happens.
Dana, with Johnson and Barry, obviously that's not two of your biggest stars, but it looks like a fight it's pretty much guaranteed to deliver fireworks. Can you talk about what the theory is?
Well, the funny thing about that is, you know, the chatter that you get about fights. First of all, there was so much hype for that fight, Sonnen versus Bisping, the Maia fight, and even after it changed, people were like, it's even more exciting now. And then after, everybody's like, oh, they set themselves up for these boring fights. Shut up. People who come out after and say, oh, we knew this, you're a liar. You're a liar, you're an idiot, and you sound like an idiot when you say that. These fights all looked exciting. You just never know what's going to happen. Anything can happen on any given night. You can have, you know, 3 fights go to decisions, or you can put on a fight that you think is going to go longer and it lasts 60 seconds. It's fighting. You know, what we're dealing with now is figuring out, the hardest part of this whole thing is figuring out production. How many fights can you schedule with the commercial load that you got and all the other things that you have to do, you know, we got this thing. We did a pretty good job in getting this thing dialed in after that first fight, going 60 seconds, and now figuring out. And I think as this thing evolves, it's going to be more about fighting. You got to understand too. Fox has a system that they used to with sports, where it's like you come into the big desk and here we go, and we're going to do this and that. What people are used to with the UFC is Goldie and Rogan are on camera for 2 seconds, going, "Here's what's going to happen." We get right into fights, and then you end up getting 40 fights in an hour. You know what I mean? So we'll get it.
Do you think there's some give and take there? Maybe that'll change a little bit?
Yeah, no doubt.
What about Maia's performance last week? Because, you know, that was an embarrassment. I thought that he gassed out the way he did. Weidman might have had an excuse, but did you talk to Demian? Was there an injury or anything that would explain why he...
You know, I hear after that he was sick leading up to the fight, but you always hear that stuff after fights. I mean, when guys put on less than stellar performances is when you hear all the stuff about what's going on.
Isn't it one thing to get the shit kicked out of you, but a total different thing to, you know, basically fail like he did? You know, he was out of shape, and the other guy would have had more of an excuse to be that way than he did.
Right.
He was training, right? So he should have theoretically been training.
I agree.
Dana, will that stop?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Will that stop you, or would it at least make you think a little bit more about in the future if a guy, you have a situation where Munoz falls out 11 days before, and you move the card around so a guy fighting on short notice, and I don't know in this case the guy on short notice actually won the fight,
right.
Just to, because a lot of people watching won't realize that the guy cut so much weight and that's why he's trained.
So what? It's all part of the growing pains of the sport. Let me tell you what. When we started on Spike TV, everybody's acting like every fight we've ever had on Spike TV was the greatest fight you've ever seen in your life. The fight business is, you know, we were on that streak, has been broken, but we were on that streak that I kept talking about, 14, 15, 16 fights in a row that were just awesome fights. And you're going to have some fights that you're going to turn off the TV and go, wasn't the greatest fight I've ever seen. Would I have turned off the show the other night and said, that sucked? No, didn't suck. The Bisping Chael fight was awesome, you know, and Bisping was a 5-1 underdog, which was ridiculous in the first place, but hi.
An important question for the fan in Montreal. You decide to cancel the next event in Montreal, so we want to know why did you take this decision and when will you be back in Montreal?
Yeah, we moved the Montreal date. We never had a solid date. There's still, we were talking about moving Atlanta too, and now Atlanta's back on again. You know, we lay out our schedule for the year of the places that we think we're going to go, but sometimes we change our mind and make some moves. We move Montreal, and we tried to get another date for Montreal, but the arena is booked that date because there's so much hockey up there. So we're working on it now. But yes, we are coming to Montreal. It's just now figuring out the date. What'd you say?
In the summer.
Yeah, I hope so. I love it up there in the summer.
Dana, you know, what about Johnny Bones? What was the decision when you decided to put him on the pay-per-view card as opposed to the big Fox card? If you have him on that, you know, the great exposure you get for him as your biggest star going down the road. Did you ever consider putting him on Fox and exposing him to the free audience?
No, not really. We haven't yet. We haven't thought about putting him on a fight yet. No.
So that never came in to just say, hey, it'll pay off down the road, knowing that you would lose pay-per-view buys in the short term, but in the long term. And why not? Just out of curiosity.
I don't know. It's a good question. Yeah, money. I mean, you want to put the, you know, you want to put the championships and the big title fights like John Jones. I mean, John Jones' fights have been amazing. I mean, the fight with H.E.A.T was awesome. They're on pay-per-view.
A lot of fans think that Fox should be the big thing instead of pay-per-view, but that's not really the case, right? I mean, that's not how the business is built, correct?
A lot of folks are out of their minds. That's nuts.
I feel like people are kind of sleeping on the Henan Barrow and Scotty Jorgensen fight. Can you talk about that one and also about just some of the younger talent on the card that you need to start to build up and how you kind of plan to get those names more as household names?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that's a great fight. And, you know, people have been asking me now if the winner of this fight in line for a title shot. And the way that we're going to build talent is the way we have the last 10 years. The great thing about this Fox deal is we have so much more distribution now. Fuel TV is about to come out with this huge press release on how successful this thing's been for them in like 30 days, however long we've been in this deal. And, you know, we're still working out the bugs and the kinks, working with a new company, a big, massive company like this, and doing the things that we're doing on Fuel and FX and Big Fox. but I think we're in a really good place a little over a month into this deal.
And is there another fight on the card that you think people really might want to pay attention to? And yeah,
the whole card. I mean, the crazy thing about the UFC and these, fans were so rabid about these fights that normally, I mean, again, going back to boxing, nobody shows up for the undercard. And when I say the undercard, I mean the co-main event. People walk in for the main event and that's it, and then they leave. We're in a situation where fans are like leaving their cable companies that they've been with and getting satellite and doing all these other things to get Fuel TV just so they can see the prelims.
Is it still 9 months before Fuel TV can get any change in the distribution?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's not my world. That's theirs. But yeah, people are noticing, and people are. I think things might happen a little quicker than 9 months.
Wasn't a lot of the carriage rate? Wasn't that the big thing that
There's a ton of issues. There's a ton of issues where depending on what system you're with, there's extra. You got to pay extra $6 or something for a different package, and the list goes on and on.
Dan Henderson, I heard some talk about Lyoto, maybe at 145.
About what?
About fighting Lyoto Machida at 145.
Dan Henderson?
Rumors about that.
Dan Henderson's in a position right now where it looks like he wants to wait for John Jones. And we'll see what happens, we'll see what happens with this Rashad fight.
What made the decision for the Eyesight Center versus the Prudential Center?
The Red Hot Chili Peppers had both dates in both places. So we were working with the Chili Peppers to try to figure out who was going to go where, and we came up, we're going to the Eyesight and they're going over to the Pru. That was it.
What you can say about the possibility of Overeem going to jail, and who can be the next opponent of Cigano if this happens?
Who's going to fight?
Overeem
in the
jail,
the charges for Overeem.
Overeem with the charges? Yeah, this Overeem thing is a weird thing. And for me to speak on it, I don't know enough about it. I guess he went to XS, a club here in Las Vegas, and he had to use the restroom. This is my knowledge of what happened. Went to use the restroom. Security was going to take him. He said, "I need security," and sure enough, he goes over there. And his side of the story is some lady started yelling at him and swinging at him and everything else. And I don't think he's in that much trouble. This isn't a situation where he beat somebody up or did anything crazy. I don't think that's the case.
But if something happened, do you have another opponent for Cigano, for Junior Cigano?
I'm gonna have to figure that out. I don't, but I'm planning on Alistar Overeem.
Yeah, the Federal Trade Commission announced this week that they're done investigating you. No harm, no foul there. Do you have any thoughts on that? Is that any relief at all, or did you always feel confident along?
I've never, ever, I mean, you guys know that have dealt with me, ever. You got these morons out there saying that we're a monopoly. Well, now you can shut the hell up. We're obviously not a monopoly.
Do you have a place for the next UFC in Brazil already? Like, it's going to be in Pacaembu or Morumbi?
The next fight in Brazil?
Yeah.
Sao Paulo.
But do you know, which stadium?
No, we're still working on that.
Why would the FTC say, make a finding later when they never acknowledged that there was an investigation in the first place?
I don't know. It was all a very strange experience, and glad it's over.
Did you speak with them directly at any point?
Did I speak with them directly? Yeah, I went out to Washington once and sat down with them.
What did you feel like during that process? Was the line of questioning?
No, it wasn't like no.
It was not a light. You were not in a room.
No, it's not like you would expect. It was actually a pretty pleasant experience.
With the Roy Nelson fight, do you really see Roy as a possible contender, or is he kind of in a gatekeeper position now?
Is he kind of a what?
A gatekeeper, or a test you've got to...
I've had the conversations with Roy many times on how I think Roy should do things, but it's very clear Roy wants to do things his way. So.
And your way would include losing some weight and...
yeah, and a few other things too.